Hey everybody, I'm Andrew from the Flutter team, and I'm here to talk with you about the past, present, and future of Flutter. How it's gone from an experimental rendering project to a tool used around the world to reduce the time and money required to unlock designers' creativity, help businesses ship fantastic apps, and empower developers to put great experiences into users' hands. What just happened? Hi. I'm not sure what's going on, but we're shooting content for the Flutter community. I'm sorry, are you Rivers Cuomo?
Yeah.
Like lead singer-songwriter for the band Weezer, Rivers Cuomo, toured the world for decades, millions of records, reinterpreted Aaron Copland for a jaded modern audience, like that, Rivers Cuomo.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Well, I don't know if you meant to beam yourself, I guess, into a different studio, but we're actually doing a tech live stream for tech folks, software developers.
I am a software developer.
You are?
Yeah. I've shipped 2 applications to support my life and work as an artist.
Oh, okay. Well, this stream is specifically about Flutter, though, so...
I build with Flutter.
You do?
Of course. My users are on more than one platform, so I need to be too. Flutter seemed like the safe choice. There are more than 1 million published Flutter apps with hundreds of millions of users and billions of dollars moving through them.
Am I asleep right now?
Plus, I like using it. The cross-platform thing is incredible. I like that I can make a web app first before going on to the difficult deployment to Android or iOS part. And hot reload, amazing.
Yeah. Okay. So we're a 2-person intro now. All right. In the next couple minutes, I need to share some numbers about Flutter and then set the stage for the rest of the content. You want to help?
Oh, yeah. You're doing great, by the way.
Thanks. Supportive community. Okay, so I asked our analytics team to crunch some stats to reflect where Flutter's at these days. And now I guess Rivers and I are going to run some numbers by you. There we go. All right, those are for you. Awesome. All right. So, first number, how old do you think the Flutter project is in years?
Well, I started using it 4 or 5 years ago, and it had been around for a while before that. So I'm going to say 7 years.
Yeah, take a look.
10 years.
10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't called Flutter back then. It was technically called Sky when it was first started. But then they changed the name, and the first commit was a little over 10 years ago.
Whoa.
Yeah. All right, next card. So we say in Flutter, everything's a widget. You may have seen that phrase.
I have.
How many widgets are publicly available out of the Flutter SDK? Like how many are sort of built in?
Oh, geez. I'm going to say more than 100. I would guess less than 200. I'm going to say 200.
Take a look.
Oh my God, 528.
Yes.
I got to learn some widgets.
There you go. Search the code this morning. Yeah, 528 widgets publicly available in Flutter. Everything from size box to multi-child render object widget. All right, next one. Since the start of this year, how many people have contributed code to Flutter?
I've been to the GitHub and there's a lot of people on there. I'm gonna say 1,000?
Take a look.
475.
Yeah, so not quite 1,000, but 475, and that runs from the beginning of the year up until about Halloween.
Okay, wow.
A little follow-on, I don't have a card for this one. How many of those folks do you think were Googlers, folks that actually worked at Google?
150.
119, that's pretty close.
Right on.
All right. Cool, okay. We have a network of meetups called the Flutter Meetup Network. There's local meetups all over the world in different languages. How many countries would you guess are covered by the network of Flutter meetups?
I think it's a lot because I see so many people from different countries online talking about Flutter. I'm going to say 123.
All right, we're not quite there yet. We have 64.
64.
About 92,000 people, though, are part of the network in 64 different countries. All right, here's a heavyweight stat now. How many people do you think use Flutter every month?
As developers?
So this is, we have analytics that the Flutter tool itself generates. If you ever run Flutter Run or Flutter Create, that uses Google Analytics. How many people invoke the Flutter tool, do you think, every month?
1 million.
Take a look. Over 1 million.
Over 1 million.
Yeah, we measure it in a couple different ways, and we don't know how much over 1 million it is, but it's definitely over 1 million now.
Nice.
Yeah. All right, last one. According to the app analytics firm Apptopia, what percentage of new apps being uploaded to the iOS App Store do you think are built with Flutter?
There's a lot of ways to make apps.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 0.5%.
0.5%.
28%?
28%.
Oh my.
So more than 1 in 4 new iOS apps going up to the App Store are built with Flutter.
Mind blown.
Yeah. Well, that was fun. Thank you for agreeing to take a pop quiz in front of several 100,000 people.
My pleasure.
All right. Time to get this party going. Since you're part of the Flutter community now, do you want to introduce the rest of our content?
That would be awesome. Let's see. Over the last decade, Flutter has gone through a few eras. At the start was the experimental era. The whole project was just a few engineers seeing if they could make the web run faster, culminating in the launch of 1.0 in 2018 when Flutter became a stable SDK. In its growth era, Flutter added more supported platforms, with new engineers like moi picking it up, the Flutter community welcoming so many new faces, new packages being published every week, and the ecosystem exploding with new code. Now we're in Flutter's production era. Thanks to its thousands of contributors and millions of developers, Flutter has grown to be something people rely on. And engineering the SDK and tools is more about delivering on Flutter's existing promises and continually improving its awesome developer experience. During this event, we'll talk a bit about all these things, including info about the last couple releases and where things are headed, plus a live Q&A with folks from the team. First up is tech lead and musician Kate Lovett to talk about how Flutter empowers developers to craft incredible user experiences. Widgets, rendering, Cupertino, and a lot of other imports that end up at the top of all my Dart files.
That was great. Thanks. Do you mind if I share this selfie with like 30 people I went to school with? So I know you noticed the little boombox earlier when we were taking a break.
Very cool. Brings me back.
Yeah. It's got a kind of Grandmaster Flash look to it. And so that's actually running Flutter right now on a Raspberry Pi, I believe, and then a little LCD screen.
Yeah, mind-blowing.
Yeah. And so, yeah, there's a bunch of community folk. Flutter supports 6 platforms officially, but there are folks in our community who do experiments all the time to see what they can get Flutter running on. I saw somebody that was doing an alarm clock yesterday. They posted to Blue Sky about it.
Oh man, I got to get into this.
Yeah, so Roman Jaquez, he seems to get more work done as a side project than I do, despite working for the Flutter team full time. But yeah, it's one of the fun parts about the SDK. Like, we're all surrounded by a bunch of glowing rectangles, and so why can't you run Flutter on whatever glowing rectangle you want?
Yeah, so what does it do?
It streams music.
It streams music.
It streams music. And so, yeah, we were listening to a Rivers Cuomo solo track earlier.
Wait a minute, like, you mean from a local server, or what do you mean streams?
No, so it'll stream, I believe, from one of the streaming services, and so we have it turned off because licensing music is no joke. But normally you could crank that out. I've seen them do it at trade shows and stuff like that. Like, this is one of their sort of showpiece projects of like VGV can knock out anything that you want them to build. They have somebody that can do it.
Very Good Ventures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were nice enough to drop it off for us.
Yeah, I use Very Good Ventures Flutter block. They make Flutter block. Is that
They're the primary maintainers of it,
right?
I believe.
You can go onto their GitHub and search the issues history, and you'll probably see me in there begging for help because I'm totally confused.
This is one of my questions. I was planning on slipping this in later, but I was curious about how you interact with the community. I know, like, is there a GitHub account called Goat Punishment that you use to kind of hide your identity a little bit?
No, actually, yeah, when I started in 2015, just programming in general, I started with an online CS course.
Oh, cool.
And at the time, I had no habit for like being part of an online community, and I was very private, and I didn't take advantage of like the online tutors or Discord or Facebook groups, any of that. I was just totally on my own, and I really suffered. Then I discovered Stack Overflow, and I went, that place was a little bit intimidating, and sometimes people are rough in there if you're a newbie like me. But eventually, I've come to feel like, oh, this is pretty safe, and I just I have the literal picture of myself on the cover of the Blue album as my GitHub picture
Oh,
and
wow.
account name Rivers Cuomo, and
Okay.
nothing bad has happened. Everyone's been really cool, and if anything, I've gotten some extra help from fans who come on, like experienced programmers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's been great.
That's really cool. I'm glad to hear it. The community is the best part of developing with Flutter. We're very lucky to have the folks, again, around the world that we get to work with. And it's very motivating for me.
Yeah, and Felix Angelov is Flutter Block, right? And Very Good Ventures. Yeah.
He's actually moved on from VGB, by the way. He's at another company called Shorebird right now.
Oh, yes. Actually, I've seen that name too. I didn't quite understand what they're doing, but he was always like so helpful and nice with Flutter Block, and like, why is this guy being so nice? What's in it for him? I don't quite understand it. Coming from a musician background, where there's a sense of community between all the different bands and stuff, but you wouldn't be like open sourcing your song, like, here, come take this part of my song and use it, and you're good luck, have a hit.
Yeah, it's just all public domain. Enjoy. Yeah. Do people sample your stuff, by the way?
Yeah. I mean, not so much artists from our generation, but new artists, like sampling is a big thing, or interpolating, where, oh, I like that chorus, let me use that chorus in my song.
Got it.
I'll cut you in, that kind of thing.
I'm at the age where people are now remaking things from when I was a kid, and those people can all get off my lawn. So you mentioned when you sort of got started learning. Are you a learn by doing person? Are you somebody that would like read docs, or do you like videos or those sorts of things? Like, how did you sort of approach the task of learning what Flutter was?
Definitely learn by doing. Yeah, I just dive in and try to make something, and back then it was Googling and Stack Overflowing. Now it's LLMing or whatever I don't know what the
Ask
verb
Gemini is what we would say.
Ask Gemini.
Live stream.
Yes, this is incredible the help you can get now from that. And I have mixed feelings though, because maybe I'm learning less. 5-10 years ago, I was going on, I really had to learn how to do every line of code myself. And I guess there was some cutting and pasting, but I think I had a much better understanding of what I'm learning now. Whereas now it's like, you can just generate a whole file or even more, and just, well, I'm a genius developer. This is great. I have no idea what I just did.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I want to ask you, like,
okay.
How do you think AI is going to be affecting Flutter in the future, or just development in the future? Big question, but
yeah, sure.
And thoughts.
Let me put this out there. Personal opinions. I don't speak for the Flutter team or Google on these matters, despite this being a Google live stream. But my personal thoughts on it are, people were worried about this with chess and Go. There was a lot of, what happens when computers are better at chess than people, and what happens when computers, and people haven't stopped playing chess, and they haven't stopped playing Go, right? And so what I am hopeful for is that more people will be able to make software applications, because I don't think the world is going to get less hungry for software and software, tools that run software. I'm hopeful that more people will be able to learn better ultimately by interacting with models, and I'm hoping they'll be able to do things that maybe you couldn't do before using models. That is my hopeful version of the future. Like I said, it's, there are other communities that have had to answer this question before, and like, I don't really see, like I said, people are still doing creative things. People are still playing chess, they're still playing Go, and they're just learning a little bit better and doing a little bit better, I think.
Yeah. Any thoughts about how Flutter specifically will change and evolve as we need to code less and less ourselves, as the LLMs can do it for us?
I think what will hopefully happen is that every engineer starts doing more of what a tech lead does. Like a tech lead reviews code and sort of designs a whole system and sets goals and stuff like that. And then you might have other engineers that are actually writing code that the tech lead then reviews.
Yeah.
And you can imagine a situation where somebody I'm going to write the tests for what the software can do. And I'm going to tell a model, hey, I want you to do this, and by the way, it should pass all these tests. And then the tech lead this engineer would then judge whether the code created by the model does that effectively. If it does, code sticks. And if it doesn't, you get back to work.
Yeah. Does it mean that theoretically the code itself could maybe not need to be as human readable? Like,
that's an interesting long-term question. Like, we talk about readability in Dart and stuff like that. I know, is it easy to understand what a piece of code does? And like, if we get to a place where an AI is writing all the code, does it really matter whether it's human readable or not?
Yeah, maybe there's other ways to construct the code that would be more efficient for the machine.
Yeah. But it's an interesting question for somebody who came into coding like you, right? Like, how would that be, what, that would be a different experience. Like, how do we keep it accessible to make sure that somebody can sort of step in and learn and enjoy what they're doing? Too? If you don't mind, what are you working on right now? Like, if you opened your IDE at home, like, what would be on the number one on the recent projects list, so to speak?
Well, I have my big projects and then my recent projects. Like my biggest project is called Weezify, and it's the interface is like it's like a Spotify like music streamer.
This is Mr. Rivers' neighborhood. You can get to it online, right? Through a web browser?
Yeah, it's a web app and iOS and Android. It's called Weezify now, but it has just my demos, thousands of them, like 4,000 of them, and
wow.
yeah, I've accumulated over like 30 years. I've been making demos.
Yeah.
So the fans can stream my demos through this Flutter app. It's really cool.
Oh, cool.
And I'm also now like the lead developer maintainer of a meditation app called Dhamma.org, which I think is used by over 1 million people worldwide. And I didn't build it, but I'm, try to fix bugs without introducing new bugs, and introducing new features. Like I just added a dark mode.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, you. I don't know if this is too personal, but you are Buddhist, correct?
I don't really associate with a particular religion, but the meditation technique I practice, I've been practicing for about 20 years, was taught by the Buddha. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
We were crowing about our monthly active users, and I didn't know you had an app with 1 million folks using it yourself. That's great.
Yeah. I'm like I said, I just came in a few years ago. That's actually one of the things that inspired me to use Flutter. Is I saw they were planning to use it. The real developers were coming from either iOS or Android. They're like, we should do this cross-platform thing. I was like, okay, this is cool because nobody knows how to use it yet. So I'm kind of on the same level as them. This is my in. And now I guess I'm kind of like the lead guy there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And responsibility too.
But then like every week or so, I'm like, oh, I got a new idea, a new app. Last week I came up with this idea called Feels, and it helps me communicate my emotions to my wife. I think it could help my son too, because he has a tough time expressing his feelings, his inner world. And so it just takes you through a series of questions like which emotions might you be feeling right now, and you can select sad, angry, scared, whatever.
Wow.
And then there's follow-up questions, and at the end you have this like paragraph that explains how you're feeling, and send to my wife. So very quickly I can just like put up this proof of concept on the web, and this is just for myself, really. No commercial aspirations.
Just something that's useful in your life.
Yeah.
I could use something like that for me and my wife to probably communicate better too. Probably save me some stress. That's awesome. And so I imagine you were talking about the demos that you've created, how you've made thousands of demos. Are you sort of having demos in app form, like not music, you know what I mean? Like sort of ideas that sort of pop into life as a small app that you're putting together?
Yeah, I mean, it always starts with a web app for me. In Firebase, that's you guys, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. They're sort of a sibling team for us.
Yeah, it's just so quick to get things up and running, and it looks pretty pro, and I can impress myself if no one else, and and then I go into my Discord server and see how the fans are reacting, and keep evolving it, and eventually things can go to the mobile apps too.
Okay. You mentioned Discord. So Firebase, I was kind of curious. You had talked about Felix and how much you enjoy using Block. I was curious, are there any other sort of libraries in the ecosystem that like Weezify, you have to be using some kind of audio library.
Yeah,
right?
So many of my apps use just audio, which is incredible. I don't know what I would do without these libraries. They do most of the heavy lifting, and then you can just import.
That's the idea, right?
Yeah.
One of the things I was curious about is you obviously well known as a songwriter. This is something that's a craft that you've been involved in for a long, long time. How do you approach writing a piece of software the same way that you approach writing a piece of music? Or are there crossovers there?
It's easier to pinpoint the differences. So coding for me is more fun and relaxing.
Okay.
In fact, when I'm on tour, I code all day long right up to the show.
Oh, wow.
Because it takes my mind off the stress of the show. and I can just work on these problems, and it's the time just flies by. It's wonderful. Whereas working on music, it's a more emotional struggle, and there's a lot more self-doubt and self-criticism. I don't know if it's because coding is my hobby, and music has been like this all-encompassing professional and creative endeavor since I was like 10 or so. So I don't know, I just have more baggage there. I'd have to ask other developers, like, how is coding for you? Is it an emotional struggle for you? Do you feel the self-doubt and self-criticism? Or is it all just fun like it is for me? I don't know. What do you think?
I'm sure there are folks that are dealing with a lot of self-doubt. Imposter syndrome is something we talk about fairly often in, not just our community, but communities in general. And, I'm a manager now. I manage 10 people. And so my self-doubt is that I'm slowly forgetting how to code. I do spreadsheets and email and, those sorts of bureaucratic things. And occasionally I get to carve out a little fun thing for myself like this right now.
It's still the fun thing.
Yeah, this part is still fun. And it's interesting. I'm definitely an amateur at this part of it. Whereas I used to be
doing great.
Thank you. Whereas I used to be a professional grade software engineer. And so, yeah, I still have a little bit of that self-doubt. I don't know. It's good as a reminder, though, that I think if I lost that, I would lose my ability to connect with the newer parts of our community. And one thing that is definitely important to Flutter is that we stay welcoming. We try to make sure that everybody understands it's a thing that you can do. If somebody's out there right now wondering if you can do it, if you're watching this live stream right now, you can do it. You should try it.
Yeah, I did it.
Yeah, it's and
your videos are amazing. They're really polished and classy, but fun.
You were very kind, and our team is going to be very happy to hear you say that. Thank you.
And they're really short, like a minute or two, and you're like, whoa, that's a cool widget. I got to try that.
Widget of the week. When I retire from Google, it'll probably go down as the single best idea I ever had. Is there anything about Flutter that bothers you or is annoying that we could fix?
I'm a big fan of Flutter Web, so whatever you can do to make that as smooth for the developer as Android or something,
Okay. Is there
sometimes the hot reload's a little funky.
Yeah, hot reload on the web is something they're working on right now. So we have hot restart where it completely restarts the app on the web, as I'm sure you've noticed. There are folks working on hot reload for the web right now. But it stinks for us on DevRel because we want to help people get started as quickly as possible. And right now, in order to experience hot reload, we have to ask you to download a whole bunch of tools like the Xcode or Android Studio or Visual Studio or something like that. Whereas if hot reload worked on the web, we could just be like, you have a web browser already. Just go download Flutter and you can try it. It'll be fine. And so I'm going to be very happy when that lands. But it is a definite pain point for a lot of people. Have you tried WebAssembly yet?
No, I've heard of that. What's that again?
So WebAssembly is a different compilation target for Flutter on the web. So when we first launched Flutter on the web, it would compile to JavaScript, and then JavaScript would run in every web browser, right? But recently they have a new standard for this bytecode format called WebAssembly, where Dart can now be compiled to WebAssembly. And so instead of getting a bunch of JavaScript as text sent down to the browser, which then the browser has to like chew through and compile, you just get pre-compiled code, basically.
Right.
And Flutter at I/O this year, so about 6 months ago, we announced support for WebAssembly. And so you can use it when you build your app for the web. You can include a little flag to try it with WebAssembly. Folks have tried it, and it's generally been quicker load times and much higher rendering speeds, stuff like that. How have you seen Flutter change in the time that you've been using it, or seen the Flutter community change? If you've been around for 5 years, you're kind of an old hat at this point.
Well, I came in right around the change to null safety.
Oh, wow. That would have been an interesting time to show up.
Yeah. I just feel like bit by bit things have gotten more like cooler and more professional, and like widgets are a little slicker and flashier, and just more fun stuff to play with.
I think that might be a common reaction just because we sort of, Flutter's original vision was to go to 6 platforms. And this was, so you have web, iOS, Android, Linux, Mac OS, and Windows. And when we got to that point, it was like, well, what do we do now?
Right.
And so a lot of
everything cooler.
Right. Yeah. A lot of the work now is like, how do we just make everything to the point that it just works?
Yeah.
You don't have to mess with it, that it sort of just works out of the box, so to speak.
Yeah. There's one thing I'm trying to implement that I can't find a package for, but it seems like a very basic function. So,
You have a very big audience of people who'd love to make a contribution so far away.
I don't know if this exists. I've looked everywhere on PubDev and GitHub, but so starting with the meditation app, we want to support casting.
Oh, wow.
So on the app, you can play videos or audio, and there should be like a cast button that you press and it ends up on your TV, right?
Yeah.
So if there's a room full of people meditating, you can all watch the same video or listen to the same guided meditation, whatever. How do you do casting?
That's, I don't know off the top of my, I want to go open my laptop, but it's off camera. I would wager that somebody's working on that right now. And, Flutter, it's often feels like a separate sort of system from all the normal thing. Sometimes you have to figure out how to go use a hardware API, like casting API or the accelerometers on a device or something like that. But at the end of the day, like a Flutter app built for iOS or Android is just an app for those platforms with a bunch of native code in it.
Right.
And so there's pretty much always a way to go do whatever it is that you want to do, even if you have to add a little bit of native code to do it.
Yeah, that's what I was gathering from the discussion online is you could write some native code. And I've never done that. It sounds interesting, but it seems like there should be a package.
There should be a plugin for it, yeah. And if there's not, a bunch of people are listening. And I can see how that would totally fit into an app for meditation where you might have some people in a room. I'm suddenly reminded of Flutter Interact. We had an event at 2019 where I almost didn't recognize that one of my colleagues was meditating. She was sitting on a couch listening to headphones. And she
During
was
the performance?
It was just right before. And she was just kind of sitting there listening to her headphones with her eyes closed. And I almost went up to ask her a question. I was like, wait, that's purposeful sitting. I don't want to bother her right now. So I waved myself off and caught up with her later. Have you ever tried IDX? Are you familiar with that?
IDX to me is a shortcut for index. I don't know.
Okay. No, it's so there's an online IDE that Google makes, and it works with Flutter. It's called Project IDX.
No.
Okay.
You mean I would use that instead of something like VS Code?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you can open it. I think it's idx.google.com. I cannot for the life of me remember their name because it's already in my URL history, so I never have to remember it. But it's an online. It uses the open source stuff that's based on VS Code. I don't know if you use VS Code.
I use VS Code. Yeah.
There you go. And it's all online, and so it'll show you a web preview in a browser, and it can also run an Android emulator for you.
Oh, cool.
And so if you're ever on a machine that you want to do a little coding on, but you don't have the Android SDK and Flutter tool downloaded and stuff like that,
right,
you can just pop open a web browser and code.
Very cool.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it, especially now because we can do workshops with it. Mm-hmm. If you want to have a bunch of people try Flutter for the first time, you don't have to spend an hour getting their machines set up. You can just here's IDX for you. I saw, speaking of, director's approaching. Oh my goodness.
Since you are a Flutter developer, we thought that you could be an honorary Noogler.
All right.
Oh my goodness. So awesome. Thank you so much for being a part of this and for answering some questions with us. I hope it's been fun for you.
It's been amazing.
All right. And thank you again for being part of our developer community. Woo!